Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today, in keeping with yesterday's style of trying out something different for the channel, today we're taking a deep dive into the history of one particular ship that is in-game. And that ship is the Tier 5 American Premium Battleship, the USS Texas. And today's a very fitting day to be filming this video, as the Texas has finally left her berth in San Jacinto Battle Park, and she's now en route to Galveston, Texas for some much needed repairs, which we will be talking about later in the video. So today's video is going to be more of a historical video talking about the Texas, her service history. We will talk about how she performs in game, but that's not going to be a huge portion of this video, but again, we will be discussing it later on. Again, I'm just trying out some different styles to see what you guys like on the channel, so let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. So let's talk about the Texas. So the Texas is a member of the New York class battleship, the only one preserved. She was launched on the 18th of May in 1912 and commissioned on March 12th of 1914. And she has a very long service life, being a ship that was launched in the 19-teens. So since she was commissioned before the start of the First World War, Texas has a very long service history. One of her first missions was a show of force in response to the Tampico incident shortly before the start of the First World War. During the First World War, Texas's service consisted primarily of convoy escorts and reinforcing British blockades. She operated with the Grand Fleet of the Royal Navy, and during most of the First World War, again, she just performed convoy escort duties and reinforced British blockades. Once the German fleet got bottled up in their harbors, again, there wasn't much action to be seen. Now, during the interwar period, Texas was greatly overhauled, and we got the superstructure that we are familiar with for those of you that have played with Warships or have visited the Texas in real life. Her boilers were also replaced with from coal firing boilers to oil firing boilers, and she was named the flagship of the U.S. fleet, and she was stationed on the eastern seaboard. She also transported President Calvin Coolidge to Havana, Cuba for the Pan American Conference. She would be stationed in San Pedro for some time before being transferred back to the eastern coast, now serving as the flagship of the Training Detachment United States Fleet, and then becoming the flagship of the newly organized Atlantic Squadron. It's also during this time period that Texas became, well, she already was a test bed at this point. They already tested, fitted her with AA guns, a catapult launcher for aircraft, and now in 1938, she became the test bed for the first shipborne radar design made by a commercial company, RCA, for the U.S. Navy. And then she later became one of 14 ships to receive the RCA CX-AM-1 radar. Once World War II broke out, Texas began operating on a neutrality patrol, which was an attempt to keep the war out of the Western Hemisphere. Then as Lend-Lease material began to flow toward Europe, Texas began escorting the convoys carrying this Lend-Lease material. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, the Texas was at dock in Casco Bay, Maine, undergoing a rest and relaxation period after 3 months of deployment in Newfoundland. For the next 6 months, she continued convoy escort missions to various Allied destinations. On October 23, 1942, Texas embarked upon her first major combat operation when she sortied with Task Group 34.8 for Operation Torch, which was the Allied invasion of North Africa. What's really interesting is that during Operation Torch, the whole amphibious invasion formula wasn't exactly perfected yet, so there wasn't any pre-invasion bombardment by the heavy units of the navies like Texas and other battleships. Rather, when the Army got ashore, they then requested fire from the battleships, including Texas, which Texas did very much fulfill. But again, since there was no pre-invasion bombardment, Texas only fired 273 rounds of her 14-inch shells, which sounds like a lot, but then when you remember she has 10 guns, that's not really that much lead being thrown downrange. When Texas was en route back to the United States, a young reporter on board was trying to outpace a rival who was on the Massachusetts, and the Texas was able to put this young reporter into their catapult launch plane and fly him back home so he could beat his rival back home. That young reporter is a fellow some of you might recognize, a guy by the name of Walter Cronkite. And since, of course, he was the first one to reach back home with uncensored coverage on Operation Torch, has certainly helped boost his career as a war correspondent. Throughout much of the war, again, Texas resumed her convoy escort duties, which she did very well. The next major combat operation that Texas took part in was the D-Day landings on June 6, 1944, of German-occupied France. And unlike Operation Torch, there was very much a pre-invasion bombardment, which commenced at 5:50 in the morning. By the time Texas had ceased fire at 6:24, already 255 14-inch shells had been fired in just 34 minutes, which is an average rate of about 7.5 shells per minute, which is the longest sustained period of fire for the Texas. As the invasion went on Omaha Beach, the invasion was in danger of collapsing due to stronger than anticipated German resistance and the inability of the Allies to get to their very much needed armored units on shore. So in an effort to help the infantry take Omaha Beach, Texas closed to point-blank range, firing at only 3,000 yards, which is 2,700 meters or 2.7 kilometers from the edge of the water, essentially point-blank range for these 14-inch guns. The guns were firing with basically no elevation. At this range, she was engaging snipers' nests and machine guns' nests just on the off the edge of the beach. By June 15th, the troops had advanced to the edge of Texas's gun range. Her last fire support mission was so far inland that in order to get the needed range, the starboard torpedo blister had to be flooded, which gave the battleship a list of 2 degrees, which enabled the guns just enough elevation to complete the fire mission. And with this, that was the last engagement Texas had on Normandy, and she left for England on the 18th of June. Then on June 25th, Texas, along with the Arkansas and Nevada, 4 of the cruisers and 11 destroyers, began to bombard the port of Cherbourg to suppress the fortifications and batteries surrounding the town, while the U.S. Army's 7th Corps attacked the city from the rear. It was here that a German shore battery composed of 4 9-inch guns managed to hit Texas. It was here where a 9-inch shell skidded across the top of her conning tower, sheared the top of the fire controls periscope off, and then the shell detonated at the bottom of the pilot house, which wounded 11 and killed 1, the helmsman on duty, Christian Christensen. Texas continued to deliver her 14-inch salvos, and in spite of the damage and casualties, managed to score a direct hit on the gun emplacement and destroy the gun emplacement at around 13:35 that day. Around an hour later, the crew discovered an unexploded 9-inch shell that they collected, disarmed, and is still on display in the Texas today. Well, I'm sure it will be once they decide where they're going to put her. After this, Texas also participated in Operation Dragoon, then was transferred to the Pacific, where she participated in the invasions of Iwo Jima and Okinawa, providing her guns in gunfire support for amphibious invasions of those islands. At the end of the war, she participated in Operation Magic Carpet. Then on February 13th, she arrived in Norfolk, where she began preparations for her inactivation, and on the 18th of June, she was then placed in reserve in Baltimore, Maryland. And then in March of 1948, Texas began her journey to her previous anchorage, which is just outside the Houston Ship Channel near the San Jacinto Monument in San Jacinto State Park. She arrived on April 20th, 1948, where she was then turned over to the state of Texas and served as a permanent memorial. After near 40 years on display in 1983, Texas was turned over to the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, who then hired a firm of naval architects to survey the ship in order to assess the deterioration of the ship after sitting in the salt and brackish water of the Houston Ship Channel for nearly 40 years, who then discovered that the ship's watertight integrity was badly compromised. The hull was open to the sea in quite a few places, and many compartments were full of standing rainwater. It was then determined that the ship needed to be placed in dry dock for major hull repairs and upgrades to keep the rainwater from collecting into the ship's inner compartments. After 5 years and $15 million, the ship was dry docked in 1988 through 1990, where major repairs were undertaken. And here we are, darn near 40 years later, in the same situation with the Texas. So there have been some propositions of a dry berth to hold the Texas, although there are issues with that. Ships are designed to float in water, and putting a ship in permanent dry dock is not that great for it, especially a very heavy ship like the Texas, which is of course made of steel, armored grade and armored thickness steel. That'll essentially cause the ship to crush itself. Even with like HMS Victory over in the UK, they have sensors all over that ship so that they can detect when part of the ship starts to buckle. And if you've taken a look at the cradle that the Victory sits in, it's not like it's, one or two harnesses here or there. You have several points of contact, I think several hundred points of contact up and down the ship to distribute the ship's weight. There's also been some speculation about something similar to, I believe, the South Dakota or the South Carolina or North Carolina that sits in mud. That's a very good way of preserving the ship. Mud's a very low oxygen substance, so you don't have near as much rust and deterioration going on. It still supports the weight of the ship. The Alabama is in a pretty similar state from what I've heard when I've been there. But before we can even get to that point in with the Texas, she has to go into dry dock because yet again 40 years later, she has some major leakage going on. I believe it was 2018, 2017 when they discovered that the ship had yet again several major leaks, and they managed to pump out. Well, they pumped out, I believe, 2,000 gallons of water for, I think, like 12 or 20 hours straight. That's a lot of water. And what they've been doing with the Texas in order to get her ready to go to dry dock, and they were doing this in the last visit that I had to the Texas, which was, I think, mid-2019, they were going into these compartments that were compromised and filling them up with foam, putting in temporary patches on the hull in order to get her ready for dry dock. And I believe in late 2019, they started to remove all the AA guns off the Texas to remove any unnecessary weight for the trip to Galveston, to the dry dock that she's going to be in for, I believe, around a year now. And early this morning, the Texas departed, and I gotta tell y'all, it is something to see over 100-year-old ship pulled out of its dock and then just take to the water. Like, it's so cool. It's such a cool set of images I've seen all day on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and from their live stream as well. I just wish I wasn't at work today so I could have actually watched the live stream. So now she's finally being taken out to Galveston, where she'll be in dry dock for, again, about a year. They're going to do some major hull repairs and restore the ship to her original World War II configuration, and I'm very glad that this ship's finally getting what it deserves, some much needed TLC and attention. She's an excellent museum ship. Even when I went there when she wasn't in her best shape, it's so cool to walk around a ship that's over 100 years old, that served in everything from the Tampico incident to World War II. A lot of history on this ship as well. I do have a video about one of my visits to the Texas. It's kind of motion sickness inducing because I was using like a 10-year-old camera to do it, but if you want to check that out, I'll link it down there. But don't forget your Dramamine, and I'll probably be throwing some clips of that throughout this whole video. And in fact, now that as I'm recording this, Texas has just reached her dry dock at 357. It's a pretty cool setup they got. It's a floating dry dock. They submerge it, you tow the ship in, and then they get her ready for the dry dock. Then you raise the dry dock, and now you've got the ship in its own dry dock that can be towed to wherever she needs to go for her work. Pretty neat thing. And as of now, we don't know for sure yet where the Texas is going to finally rest at. The thing is, the main thing with San Jacinto is that, I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but it is in the middle of nowhere. You drive past, like, I think 17 oil refineries to get there, and yeah, ain't a whole lot of people there. So they're trying to find a location to where she'll be able to receive much more tourists. The Alabama's in like a freaking golden location right off I-10, literally right next to I-10, one of the best places for an attraction. We're outside of Mobile as well. I think a lot of the rumors have been she's going to stay in Galveston at the Seawolf Museum, again right by Galveston, a big tourist attraction for Texas, for East Texas, and one place that I do like to go quite a lot. So if she goes there, wonderful, great combination for me, Texas and Galveston all in one. But again, we shall see. So Texas in game. Now that we've spent the past 10 minutes talking about the real ship, I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about the ship in game because I did a whole video on the Texas not too long ago. But Texas in game is in a very unfortunate situation because her thing back in the day is that Wargaming took the first American battleship to receive AA and absolutely just ran with it. And back when Texas was first released, she had simply the best AA in game from tier 5 to tier 8. You didn't go near a Texas in a CV because you weren't coming back with planes. This is before the CV rework too, when planes mattered. Like, you were going to lose your squadron if you went near the Texas and anything that wasn't like a tier 8 CV, which of course, well, back then we had odd tier CVs too, but any CV that the Texas could see, you just didn't go near it because you weren't going to have planes after you got done striking. Speaking of Wargaming too, Wargaming did help out with the fundraising for the Texas dry dock project. I think, what was it, like in 2018, 2019, they had the fundraising event with the Texas, which very cool Wargaming, very cool. But anyway, since the CV rework, that unfortunately got nerfed. Her AA range is now standardized, the same as the New York class, the Tech Line Tier 5 American battleship. And let me just double check right here. I think it's like 3 kilometers or 3.5. Yeah, 3.5 kilometers is her AA range, which is not great. Now her AA DPS is still very high, much higher than the New York's, but with 3.5 kilometer range, even the not so great carriers don't really care too much because it's so short that as long as you don't fly into it with a full squadron, you'll lose a negligible amount of planes. Yeah, sure, you'll take a plane or two with you, but that CV is still getting through, and it's not like it is before. And to get this insane AA back in the day, Texas was given a much longer reload time on her main battery guns, among some other small changes between the New York and the Texas. So for her 10 14-inch guns, Texas has a 34.3 second reload time, while the Nork, which has again the same guns, has a 30-second reload time. And since this nerf to Texas's AA, nothing's changed at all. And needless to say, it's pretty terrible that a ship whose main selling point was her A was fantastic gets nerfed in that way and then isn't compensated in any other way, shape, or form. So this is my pitch to you, Wargaming. The real-life Texas is finally getting the treatment that she deserves, thankfully. Give the in-game Texas the treatment that she deserves as well. An in-game ship that's representing a real-life ship that has a very, very rich history with the U.S. Navy, with World War I and World War II. Give this ship what she deserves and a buff to her, either her main battery reload time. Now, I do understand that the ship still does have insanely high AA DPS when you are within her AA range, so I get maybe not cracking it all the way back down to 30 seconds on her main battery guns, but maybe like a 32-second reload time, but a slight buff to this ship. Again, since so much has changed about this ship since her first introduction into the game all the way back in the day. Oh, and it does have about a kilometer less range than the New York as well, both being fitted with the American Plotting Room Mod 2 module. But yeah, guys, that's it for the Texas today. Just want to dive into the ship's history. I'm not really sure how long this video is going to wind up being, but again, trying out some different style of videos for you guys. Obviously, with other ships, we'll probably spend a little bit more time talking about the ship in game, but again, I made a full video on Texas, I think not even a month ago, so if you want to see a full deep dive into the in-game Texas, please check out that video, which I'll link either here or in the description or in a pinned comment down below. But again, let me know if you guys like to see more of this style of video where we do a deep dive into the ship's history. Again, not like something like a 40-minute video on a ship's history, but taking a longer look at the history of the ship and then talking about the ship in game. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think about this in the comments down below. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Thursday. Have a wonderful rest of your week. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe as well. We're on our way to 40,000 subscribers. We're getting very close to that goal, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you guys have a wonderful Thursday, wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.